Hello everyone, and welcome back to Berks One-on-One. I know it's been a little bit, but I'm back now, and we have a good video for you today. It's going to be on the Berks Heritage Center. Now, I'm sure many of you have knowingly or not walked by the Berks Heritage Center. If you've ever been over by the Red Bridge Park, next to Grings Mill, it's over in Why I'm Missing, I'm sure plenty of you have been there. But you may not have been inside of the actual Heritage Center itself. So hopefully by the end of this, you will be encouraged to go check out the Heritage Center for yourself. It's a very cool program. They're doing tours all the time, and I would definitely recommend it. So without further ado, let's hear a little bit more from Jessica herself.
So my name is Jessica Chernick. I am the Historic Resource Coordinator here at the Berks County Heritage Center, which is a part of the Berks County Parks and Recreation Department. It's one of 4 parks that are along the Topolhocken Creek, right in Wyomissing and Bern Township, between those 2 townships. I'm mainly centralized at the Heritage Center, where I manage the tours, a number of part-time staff who lead those tours, as well as the museums on site, which include the Gruber Wagon Works and the Heister Canal Museum. So the Heritage Center got its start in 1978, and it had fully intended to be a bit more of a recreation area. We have the great big field that's out next to the main historic properties that was going to have soccer fields and a bit more focus on recreation. But once the Wagon Works was moved to the property in 1976, and then there was interest from a private canal collector of having a museum set here, it really began developing into what's known as a historic interpretive area. So there's a lot of different historic structures here. There's been a good number of development, different buildings moved here to just sort of showcase a lot of different areas of Berks County's history. There are quite a few different places in the Heritage Center, so we offer tours that are guided of the Gruber Wagon Works, which is a 19th century wagon manufacturing facility that was actually moved here in 1976. We also have the Heister Canal Museum open Thursdays through Sundays. It's self-guided. It's your typical traditional museum, so you can kind of have a look around at different artifacts and pictures in the museum, all about the Schuylkill navigation system, which ran from Port Carbon, Pennsylvania, all the way to Philadelphia, and a bit about the Union Canal, which actually runs right behind the barn. It started in Middletown, Pennsylvania, and all the way into the city of Reading. So the Canal Museum is called the Charles Howard Heister Canal Center, or Canal Museum. It was built under the assumption that we would be acquiring the private collection of this gentleman here, whose name is Charles Howard Heister, and he was a local canal expert. He had family that lived and worked along the canals for several generations. And come the late 1920s, when that canal era was ending and the different offices and businesses were closing, they began dumping all of their artifacts and ledgers and paper materials into the canal to be used as fill, because nobody was using the canals anymore. They could just be filled in. And he saw this happening, and he immediately wanted to save as much stuff as he possibly could to be able to remember that time period. And he eventually acquired what's known as the largest private collection of 19th century canal memorabilia in the United States. It's about 1,400 objects, a lot of which is actually housed off-site, just because this museum isn't quite big enough to put everything he acquired in. And that included paper artifacts as well, which is in our archives in a bit more of a secure spot. So everything in here, it has to do mainly with the Schuylkill navigation system, but there's a few things with the Union Canal. And as you make your way around the museum, you can see a lot of photographs of the canal period. We have a video that kind of introduces people to the canal era, just because it's something that I don't think a whole lot of people have learned about over the years, but they are still around as far as just memories and ruins go. So the other location that you can take tours in here is the Gruber Wagon Works, and this is by tour only. We have really not a ton of signage up here that you could do a self-guided tour, so you will always be up here with a guide. The tours here, they last about an hour long, and they explore just about the entire operation history of the Gruber Wagon Works. Originally, this building was located in Mount Pleasant, which is where Blue Marsh Lake stands today. It was built in 1882, and then over the years saw a number of additions as the business developed and became more and more successful. And the family that worked here were the Gruber family, the first owner. His name was Franklin Gruber. He started really just hand making wagons, and then as his sons took over, he had 5 sons, 4 of which worked here in the Gruber Wagon Works. They began purchasing more and more machines because as the building developed and as their business developed, they began making more and more wagons. At one point, right about 1915, they had some of their peak years, which were about 100 wagons per year. So to keep up with the demands of repairs and building new wagons, they really did a whole lot of mass production here, and the machines certainly helped with that. We also have the paint shop, which is on the 2nd floor, along with doing the construction of wagons. They did painting just because it really set their wagons apart from other businesses in the area, and it also protected the wagons from the elements as they were out and about in the field. The wagons that they did make here, they really made 2 main wagons. They made box wagons, which typical, very boxy wagons. They were used for carting around goods, produce, taking things to market, and a bit more of the transportation side of people and products. And then they also made hay flats here, which are a bit more angled, not as boxy, and they were primarily used on the farm to be harvesting hay, corn, grains, different things like that. And they would be piled up inside and driven to their storage area for the farmer. The tours here kind of cover everything from that hand-making process all the way to the machining and eventually to its closure in 1972 with the final owner, Frank Gruber. It gets confusing. We have Franklin in the beginning and Frank at the end. When the business closed, eventually with the development of Blue Marsh Lake, weren't really sure if it would be around much longer. Eventually it was put on the National Register of Historic Places and interest began to be shown in it. The Army Corps of Engineers, as they were developing plans for Blue Marsh Lake, they had to go and look at the different buildings that were on the site where the lake would be and determine their historical significance, whether they wanted to try to save the building, whether it would just have to be documented and raised eventually. And the Wagon Works, when they came inside of the building, they saw all of the original tools and machines. They saw posters on the wall. There was even Frank, who was still alive at that point, to be able to tell them about the business. And they kind of immediately knew this place really should try to be saved. And with funding from the federal government and state governments, 1976 was the bicentennial year, so there was a lot of money being thrown at different history projects. And then the county kind of committing to be the caretakers of this building. They managed to break this building into 4 separate pieces. They loaded them onto flatbed trucks, and then they drove them about 5 miles from Blue Marsh Lake to the Heritage Center, where there was a pre-built foundation. Thankfully, everything went very well. They set the building back down on the foundation and repaired it, put everything back together, restored it, and here it stands. If you're interested in taking a tour of the Wagon Works or of seeing any of the other properties on the site or just interested in asking questions, you can of course go to our visitor center in the lower level of the barn where you can purchase tickets for the Wagon Works tours. We also have a snack bar and a gift shop in there as well. So here at the Heritage Center, we have a variety of different structures that you may not be able to always go inside, but you can at least have a look at. So to start off, we have our park offices here that are actually in an old stone farmhouse. It has seen a number of additions over the years, so it had its first structure built in the 1770s roughly, and then the second half of the stone structure was built in the 1790s. The back half you can really tell is a little bit more modern. That was built in the 1920s, and we use that for storage as well as for some of our extra collections that we aren't able to house in the museums themselves. Keep them a little bit safer back there. Other things that you can see on the property is the really popular Wirtz's Ledge Bridge, which is right across from the stone farmhouse here. That was built in 1867, and it's known as the longest single-span bridge in Pennsylvania. That's about 208 feet long, depending on where you measure from. And single span just means that there's nothing holding it up underneath. There's no pillars holding it up in the water. It just makes sure that if there's logs or things coming down on the Topahawken Creek, it's not crashing into the pillars and causing damage to the bridge itself. So it's a pretty impressive structure that a lot of people really like walking through as their entrance point to the park. Other things here that you'll see are we have Epler Schoolhouse. That was actually moved very recently in 2020, and it's run by the Friends of the Epler Schoolhouse, which is its own kind of separate organization from the Parks Department. They're in charge of maintaining that building. They've done a whole lot of footwork as far as restoring the inside, and they usually open it up on the weekends that you can have a little peek inside and see what it looks like, and they've done a really good job of making it look more like a schoolhouse than what it was before, which was an actual residence.
Okay, my name's Gary Lance. I'm from the Friends of the Epler's one-room schoolhouse. I do tours here on the weekends. The school was moved here in 2020, and it's been a part of the Heritage Center now for 4 years. The building was built in 1847 on the old Epler farmhouse property. And there was a school here in 1931, so for 84 years children went to school here. And in 1931, when they did away with the one-room schoolhouse system, the building went back to the farmhouse property, and it stayed there till 2017 when the Hartmans sold the property, and the group was formed to save the building and move it here to the Heritage Center, which we managed to do in 2020. You can visit the schoolhouse between the hours of 10 to 4 on a Saturday and 12 to 4 on Sunday. Just to let you know, the room is something to see because it has been basically remained untouched. When they had renovated it, they had just covered it up. So what you're going to see here is the original entrance, the original structure as it was when it was a school, the unique architecture, the color scheme, and even the floor that we're standing on is the same floor that was here when it was a schoolhouse. So it is well worth your time to come visit.
We've got a grist mill on site as well. It's a red 3-story structure that was moved here from Valley, Pennsylvania, out towards Boyertown. It was moved here in separate pieces. They took the whole thing apart and then rebuilt it here on site at the Heritage Center. And a lot of times we think of grist mills or mills as having the nice big water wheel. This one was a little different. It had a water turbine in the basement, and the family would really only use it for themselves. They would grind animal feed for their farm, and they would be able to hook the belts inside up to various machines, such as washing machines or meat cutting machines, all sorts of different things to make their lives a little bit easier. Along with the farmhouse, other farming properties here that are original to the site, we have the milk house, which is the white building behind me, as well as the smokehouse, which is the brick building there. And then, of course, our barn, which acts as both our visitor center on the lower level, as well as the Canal Museum being on the second floor. All of those are original to the property. The barn is actually the second. It was originally burned down in 1947, and then it was rebuilt to be the barn you see today. Otherwise, there's just other little bits and bobs throughout. Out in the field is Deppen Cemetery, which was moved here from Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania, which is where Blue Marsh Lake is today, and also the Bicentennial Eagle Memorial, which is out in the field as well. Yeah, lectures, we've had quite a few topics that are covered. Our most recent one, we had one on the Lenape people as well as indigenous peoples in Berks County. We had someone come by from, Doc Todwin, who came by and gave a talk about that. And then we have had all sorts of goofy things. We've had the history of outhouses covered. We've had Daniel Boone. We've had quilts, the history of quilts from people up at the Kutztown Folk Festival. So it's really an endless number of topics, sometimes directly related to Berks County, sometimes that are just about handcraft that is enjoyed by people in Berks County. As far as supporting the parks in general, it's a lot you can do, and some of it's very, very simple. Some of it is just a matter of using our facilities. Maybe it's renting pavilions, maybe it's just being in the parks, which thankfully for all of us is free. You can enjoy the trail, you can enjoy the different properties with no charge. All the different pickleball sites and tennis courts, things like that are just really up for use. Other things are just coming to our programs. If there's a lecture you're interested in. They're usually free. You can come on over and listen to an interesting historical lecture or a nature lecture, different workshops, all sorts of different programs that we have planned throughout the year. So volunteering at the Heritage Center is a fairly simple process. You really just have to send an email to either myself or my supervisor or really any number of people, and whatever you're interested in doing. It could be you're just interested in helping out in our gift shop or snack bar. Maybe you're just interested in greeting people. Maybe you want to give tours, which are typically an hour long in the Wagon Works. Whatever your interest is, we'll send it to the correct person. There's other volunteer opportunities within the parks. It includes trail ambassadors, really all kinds of different opportunities. And all of that is just a matter of emailing the right person and saying, hey, I'm interested in just really walking the trail and making sure things stay tidy, and we'll get your information to that person. You can email me. It would be jchernich, CHERNICH, @berkspa.gov. Any sort of website stuff is going to be on the County of Berks website at berkspa.gov, I believe is their URL. And we're one of the tabs within the various departments in the county. And our page is going to have a list of upcoming events. You can download the program booklet to be able to see all of the programs that are coming up for the season that we are in, and all sorts of different resources and information regarding purchasing tickets for tours, which can just be done on site, or just generally where to go and what to see at the different parks.
Thank you all so much for watching. I know for the past few weeks this channel has been a little bit inactive. I haven't got my usual uploads up other than shorts. The reason for that is that I've started a new job recently. As far as what that means for this channel, production is going to have to slow down. This is going to be a very demanding job. I'm going to be working lots of long hours, and as a result, my schedule for interviewing is going to be a lot more hectic, especially for the next few months. But what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to make shorter videos focused on the history of some of the buildings in Berks County. Especially after visiting the Heritage Center, I got to thinking about all of the different buildings inside of Berks County that have long, interesting histories behind them, and how a lot of that stuff isn't very well documented. That won't necessarily come out quickly, but it'll at the very least be a bit more consistent than if I were to try to continue doing solely interviews. That does not mean the interviews are done, it just means that they won't be as frequent. I'm still going to be posting shorts, and those will also be available on my TikTok, on my Instagram, on my Facebook through Reels. Especially on Facebook, I'll be making posts if I don't have any videos. I'll be making more announcements. You can also, of course, check the community tab on this channel. If you're subscribed, those should occasionally pop up in your home feed, so you'll be able to keep up with any information that way. So until next time, this is Berks One-on-One, signing off.